Hello, and welcome to another session of Excel Programming for Clinicians with me, Dulotson Callum. In this session, we will cover type conversions. Now, on occasion, the data we get from, say, an import or from our users may not be of the right type, and we may need to do a type conversion before we can work with it. So in this session, we will look at how to convert to a Boolean type, how to convert to a date, how to convert to an integer, how to get the value of a piece of text which may have a number contained in it, and how to convert to the string type. Okay, let's start by taking a look at the convert to Boolean function. The convert to Boolean function converts an integer into a Boolean value of true or false. Let's declare a variable to demonstrate this. We declare a variable isDeceased as an integer, and we'll set isDeceased equal to 0. Let's display this in the message box. I'll give my message box a title, isDeceased without convert to Boolean. Okay, let's run that and see what it looks like. And as you can see, we get a 0. Now let's try converting that to a Boolean. Let's comment out this message box and let's create a new message box. And this time we'll use our convert to bool and we'll pass in our isDeceased variable. Remember, this is currently set to 0. And I'll give that a title. Okay, isDeceased equal to 0, but with convert to Boolean. Let's run that and see what it looks like. Now, isDeceased is equal to 0 with convert to bool, and this time we get false. So a value of 0, when converted to a Boolean, converts to false. Let's take a look at what a value of 1 does. Let's change our variable for isDeceased and assign 1 instead of 0. Let's run this again. This time, when isDeceased equals 1, with convert to Boolean, we get true. Let's try some other values. Let's set isDeceased to -1. Let's run this again and see what we get. When isDeceased is equal to -1, with convert to Boolean, again, we get true. In fact, any value other than 0 will return true when used with convert to Boolean. So convert to Boolean converts any integer other than 0 to true, 0 converts to false. Next, let's look at convert to date. Convert to date converts any text value that can be evaluated as a date into a date value. Let's look at some examples. Let's declare a variable for patient date of birth. We'll declare it as a string. Let's assign a value. Now let's try converting that into a date variable. We'll display that in the message box. We'll use the convert to date function and we'll pass in our patient date of birth variable. And let's use the patient date of birth as our title. Let's run that and see what it looks like. And as you can see, it converts it to a date and displays it in our message box. Let's copy this, comment it out, and try a different text string that should evaluate to a date. Let's run that and see what that looks like. Now again, because our text string can be evaluated as a date, it successfully converts to a date using the convert to date function. Let's look at some more examples. We'll copy this, comment it out, and paste it below and make some changes. This time, I'll write my date in a different way. January 1st, 1970. Let's use that as our title of our text box and run that and see what we get. Again, because the string can be evaluated to a date, convert to date converts it successfully to a date. There's one more example I want to show you. Let's copy this, comment it out, and paste it below. And this time we're going to use a number. What is this number? Let's run it and see if it can convert to a date. And the number successfully converts to a date. So Excel, when presented with a number in the convert to date function, it calculates that based on the number of days since the 1st of the 1st, 1900. So it calculates that as a number of days since the 1st of the 1st, 1900 and converts it into a date. Let's run that one more time. So 25,569 days since the 1st of the 1st, 1900 gives us a date of the 1st of the 1st, 1970. Next, let's take a look at the convert to integer function. The convert to integer function takes any number or any string that can be evaluated as a number and it converts that into an integer. You have to be very careful with decimals, as we will see. Let's take a look at some code. Let's declare a variable for patient BMI. Let's declare another variable for patient BMI estimate. And this time we'll declare that as an integer. Finally, let's declare a variable to hold our description of the patient's BMI. Let's set patient BMI to 25.6. And let's use our convert to integer function to convert this value into an integer and then display it in a message box. Patient estimated BMI is equal to convert to integer, and then we'll pass in the patient BMI, which, if you remember, is set to 25.6. Let's display this estimated BMI in a message box. I'll give my message box a title. So I've got a patient BMI here, which is declared as a double, and I'm passing in the value 25.6. I'm using my convert to integer function to convert this 25.6 into an estimated BMI, which will be an integer. And then I'm displaying that integer in the message box with a nicely formatted title. Let's run that and see what we get. And as you can see, patient BMI of 25.6 when converted to an integer converts to 26. So the number is rounded up. So you have to be very careful when using convert to integer to be sure that you do want your numbers rounded up or rounded down. Let's copy this code, comment it out, and look at another example. This time, let's set it to 25.4. Let's run that again and see what it looks like. And as expected, it gets rounded down this time to 25. So the convert to integer function is very useful, but you have to be mindful that it does round your numbers up or down. Finally, let's take a look at one more example. This time, I'm going to use the patient BMI info, which you can see is declared as a string. So I'll pass in a string of 26.8. I'll then display this in a message box using my convert to integer to convert patient BMI info into an integer. Just to show you one more trick, if your text is going off the screen, you can put an underscore and hit return, and as long as the underscore is the last entry in a line, Excel accepts that the next line is a continuation of the line above. Let's run this code and see. Remember, we're passing in a text value. And as you can see, not only does Excel accept that text value, it also rounds it up as expected from 26.8 to 27. So as long as the value you're passing in to convert to integer can be evaluated as an integer, Excel accepts it and does the conversion for you. Next, let's take a look at the val function. The val function is really useful. What it does is that it converts a string value into a numeric value. The only criteria is that the string value has to start with numbers at the front. As long as the string value starts with numbers, Excel val function can be used to convert that string into a numeric value. Let's demonstrate. Let's declare a variable for patient weight. And we'll declare that as a string. Let's assign a value. Okay, we've assigned a value of 85.4 kilograms. Now, this is clearly not just a numeric value, it's a number and some text. The Excel isNumeric function is really useful for checking a value that's passed in to see if that value is completely numeric or not. Let's use a message box to display true or false. Is patient weight numeric? And we'll use the Excel isNumeric function and we'll pass in the patient weight. This function returns true or false depending on whether or not this value is numeric. And as we can see here, it is not, so we'll expect this to return false. Let's run this and see what we get. Is patient weight numeric? And the answer is false. So let's make that numeric. Let's declare a variable for weight. And let's assign weight to the value of the patient weight string. Now let's check if weight is numeric. So now I'm passing in patient weight into the Excel val function, and the val function should return just the numeric portion and leave out the text portion. So as I said before, the val function works if the string always starts with a number and it doesn't matter what text is at the end. So now I'm expecting weights to be numeric. Let's run that and see. Is weight numeric? And now it is. Let's try some more examples. Let's declare a variable for patient height. And let's declare another variable for height. Let's set height to a string value of 1.85 meters. And let's test if height is numeric. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm using a message box and I'm displaying the text, is patient height of, and I'm concatenating on the patient height. And then I'm concatenating on the string numeric. So I'm asking the question, is patient height 1.85 meters numeric? And then I'm concatenating on the Excel function is numeric, and I'm passing in my patient height. Let's run that and see what we get. Is patient height of 1.85 meters numeric? And of course, the answer is false. Now let's copy this. We'll use that in a minute. Let's assign height to be equal to the value of patient height. And now we want to display that in a message box. So now is height of, and now we only want to display the height numeric. Okay, so I'm displaying a message box and I'm saying is patient height of, and this should be just the value of the patient height function, which starts off being 1.85, but should now, after using the val function, should now be just 1.85. So is patient height of 1.85 numeric? And I'm using the is numeric function and passing in the height, and I'm expecting it to be true. Let's comment out this message box. And let's run the code and see what we get. And now we get is patient height of 1.85 numeric, and of course the answer is true. So our val function is really handy for extracting the value of a string, provided that string starts with a numeric entry. What happens if it doesn't start with a numeric entry? Let's comment out this code and take a look. Let's declare a variable for BMI, a string, and let's assign BMI. So here I'm assigning BMI and I'm telling Excel that BMI is calculated by dividing weight by height raised to the power 2. And for this patient, it's 24.9 kilograms per meter square. Let's display this in a message box using the val function. Okay, what do you expect to happen with the val function? Let's run this and see. The string starts with the text and so cannot be converted into an integer. Finally, let's look at the convert to string function. The convert to string function, like all the other convert functions, can convert an entry into a string value, provided that entry can be evaluated as a string. Let's look at some examples. Let's declare a variable for patient BMI. We'll declare that as a double, and let's declare another variable for patient BMI info, and we'll declare that as a string. Let's set patient BMI equal to 25.6. And let's derive the patient BMI info by using the convert to string function and passing in patient BMI. Now let's display that patient BMI in the message box. So we're displaying the patient BMI info, which is derived by passing in the patient BMI, a numeric value, into our convert to string function to obtain the patient BMI info as a string. And we're displaying that in the message box with a nicely formatted title. Let's run that and see what it looks like. On patient BMI, 25.6 as string converts to 25.6. Let's look at another example. Let's declare a variable for patient being obese, and we'll declare that as a Boolean. Let's set obese to false. Let's use the convert to string and pass in the obese variable. And let's display that in a message box. Okay, so we want to display the patient BMI info, which has been derived by passing in obese into the convert to string, and we're displaying that in a message box with a nicely formatted title. Let's run that and see what it looks like. And false converts to a string of false. Let's try a date example. Let's declare a variable for the date the BMI was taken, and we'll declare that as a type of date. Let's set that date to 11/11/2020. Now let's convert that to a string. And let's display that in a message box. I'm using a message box to display the patient BMI info, which has been derived by passing in the BMI date, which has been assigned the date value, and then converting it to a string using the convert to string function. And I'm displaying that with a nicely formatted title. Let's run that and see what it looks like. And BMI date is successfully converted into a string. So we've taken a quick look at some ways to convert a value you've been provided with. This could be through a user input, or it could be something you've got from a database, or maybe imported from a file. And sometimes it's not in the format you want, and you may need to convert it to the format you want to work with. And so there are some handy tools, pre-built functions in Excel that you can use, the convert functions: convert to bool, convert to date, convert to integer, and convert to string. And while you're doing that, you may want to use the val function to get the value of a string, and you may want to use the isNumeric function to determine whether a value is numeric or not. Okay, I hope you found that useful and interesting, and I will see you in the next video.